Good morning, everyone, or maybe close to afternoon at this point. Welcome to our next session. We are incredibly fortunate to have Ron Culler, the Vice President of Cyber Development Programs, here to moderate this panel and to introduce our wonderfully talented and experienced guests. Please put your hands together and welcome them. They're going to speak about the art of possible, transforming how we develop the next-gen cyber workforce. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. These are the important people, so I'm not going to take any time other than to say we appreciate you being here, and we hope that we can give some ideas as to how we build out our next-gen cyber workforce. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they're better at it than I am. Camille.
Hello, Camille Stewart Gloucester. I am the former Deputy National Cyber Director at the White House in the Office of the National Cyber Director, and now, as of about a week ago, I am just breathing a little.
And I miss her a lot. I'm CUMO, I'm Assistant National Cyber Director on Workforce from the White House. I used to work for Camille.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Jen Mathis. I'm the Vice President of Career Training for ACI Learning, and I've been in technical education for over 10 years. Now passionately committed to workforce development for cyber and IT, but also apprenticeship. So welcome.
Good morning. I'm Joel Rasmus. I'm the Managing Director of Sirius at Purdue University. Sirius is the nation's largest, oldest, and top-ranked interdisciplinary academic research institute for cybersecurity.
Thank you. Well, we have to go through the disclaimer. It's not our fault. Obviously who we are. Let's get into the good stuff here. So what we want to talk about are some of the challenges that exist out there, some of the, how industry and workforce can help, what the future is going to look like. But when it comes to challenges, given the speed and pace of technology advancement, how do we overcome some of these challenges that we have? We've got deficits in qualified educators and instructors. That's just going to get worse. We have issues with curriculum development, with the speed and modality of how we can develop curriculum. And then we've got artificial barriers that we've put up. And those are things that we shouldn't have in place but do. And unfortunately, industry and academia and everybody else has kind of contributed to this. So these guys have some fantastic input on these. And that's kind of what I want to start with is, based on some of these challenges, how are we going to come up with new instructors? How do we train those? Because to teach in a high school, you have to have a degree. To teach in a college, you have to have another degree. And to teach in a university, it's even another degree. And if you have somebody that's a really sharp instructor, a really sharp educator, they're getting sucked out in the industry and earning 3-4 times what they were. So how are we going to address this?
Yeah, so I would start with the National Cyber Workforce and Education Strategy, and you'll probably hear about it a lot in this conversation. But when we launched that initiative to develop that strategy, which seeks to address a lot of the challenges that we're going to talk about today, we had a number of conversations with educators, with students, with training providers, with universities to truly understand the challenges. And Ron articulated a lot of them, but that tension between finances, getting paid and going into the industry, the degree requirements over teaching at a university in particular, but any degree requirements, the desire to give back, but the inability to have the structures to allow for practitioners to go into schools or to support learning, the inability for educators to even carve out the time to add cybersecurity to their curriculums, whether that's K through 12 or more, were abundant. People were very confused and upset with why the system could not adapt to those challenges and be able to address them. And so those were some of the things that we seeked to change. And it's going to take creativity. The thing that you will see in a lot of the work that CU is leading is, and he'll talk more about it, is the creativity of the solution sets, the collaboration between government, whether it's federal or state and local, and nonprofits and education institutions and private sector is what we will need to be able to address many of these challenges and to test the boundaries on education as we have seen it traditionally.
I guess I'll just jump in here and to talk about some of the stuff that we're working on now. As of last week, the federal government can lead in certain areas, but we can't do it all on our own, right? Which is why we have sort of like the panelists here, as well as all of you here, is to talk about how we can collaborate to make progress on some of these issues. But one of the things that we did last week was we announced that a whole classification of employees in the federal government can now be hired based on their skills, regardless of how they acquire the skills, degree or not, through apprenticeships, on-the-job training. And we're also removing minimum use of experience in terms of requirements, so that it doesn't serve as a barrier, right? But that is on the workforce side. But what we wanted to do is to send a signal to the community colleges, to universities, to private employers, to sort of say that if we can do this, you can do it too. That's why during the convening, we actually have companies that you don't traditionally think of as tech companies, right? Like John Deere or Union Pacific, to really talk about the opportunities here to make sure that more folks can get into these jobs. In terms of sort of like getting cyber into more majors and colleges and whatnot, we run into, every time we talk to professors, educators, the number one question is, what are we taking out? Right? When we add cyber, what are we taking out? Honestly, I don't know what the answer is. We're going to have some programs to make sure that we make some investment to develop some curriculum, but we do need people to actually use this curriculum. I think like getting the content creation is one piece of it. The second piece is how do we make sure that the professors and the instructors and the institutions are set up to actually even deliver this content.
It's interesting because we've heard a little bit about traditional education and building our cyber workforce through the four-year path, but there's also a pathway around certification training, and there's an adjunct model. So as practitioners in the field, every one of you in this room, most likely, could come on as an adjunct, working part-time, as your schedule allows, and you could help train the next generation. So if there was a takeaway for you today, I would highly recommend you look into using your expertise in the field to give a little bit back to the next generation to be able to help them understand what it's going to take and what it's required, and the content's going to be readily available for you. It's a matter of just giving a little bit of time to teach others. So I think that could be pretty powerful.
Jen, as the academic up here, I agree with you. We could hire more adjunct faculty to teach. I'm going to take a half step off. We, the industry, still struggle with attracting young talent, high school age, to this career path. Most high schoolers and below have a very different view of what cybersecurity is. They still picture the hoodie-wearing guy in the basement. And
drinking Mountain Dew.
Yeah, and I suspect we have one or two of those here, but the majority of you are not hoodie-wearing, sitting in the basement at a screen 8 hours a day. I have two sons, very proud of them. I could never convince either one of them to go and do cybersecurity. Yet one of them works for one of the dot mills in intelligence, and he tells me, "Oh man, Dad, I wish I'd listened to you more." We're not attracting enough young people into this because we don't show them exactly what cybersecurity is. In many of the high schools, you hear the same thing as we do in the college, in that, well, why aren't we teaching more cybersecurity, or at least even some better computer security or computer science at the high school level? And it's the same thing, is that, well, we don't have anybody qualified to teach that. And if we teach that, what are we going to drop? So you mentioned something about what are we going to drop. Now, I'm going to stick my neck out here. This is dangerous here, but we require most high schools, if you're in a college track, to take 2 semesters of a foreign language. I would love to have C or another competent computer language be viewed as that. If students can start to learn to code when they're young, it at least opens up their eyes to possibilities. And as we know, everything is connected now today.
Can I just jump on there real quick? 2 points. One, Hampton University, while we were doing the work to build the strategy, decided they wanted to make cyber one of the core courses across every major across the university. They're still working to get there. But that kind of awareness that it is a foundational skill set is what we need more of across universities, across K through 12 education, and to implement that set of cyber skills, which goes beyond digital literacy, which is the being able to turn the device off and on. It's also computational literacy and digital resilience to be able to adapt to changing technological dynamics. If we teach that to folks, they'll be more open to it, which feeds into the other point you made about narrative. That is really, really important. The fact that people think that it's the person with the hoodie in the basement with the Mountain Dew, or that people are just so terrified that they self-select out because there's so much cognitive dissonance when you bring up the term cybersecurity that they do not want to even think about what the possibilities are, when in actuality the technologies that they use every day and navigate every day are exactly the root of the work that they would be doing. Like, think about how many of the kids in your life, right? Your students, your kids, your nieces and nephews can find their friends in a minute online. Between geolocating them on social media, looking through whatever other data sets they have access to, that's threat intelligence, that's cyber threat intelligence. They have just found their friend. And if we had the conversation in a way that made people see how they are already doing the work, how it is a part of their everyday lives, I think we'd have a stronger pathway to these careers.
One of the first decisions that Camille and I made back in the day was the naming of the strategy. It was very deliberate. That's why it's not called the National Cybersecurity Workforce and Education Strategy. It is cyber, because we're trying to expand the aperture, right? We're trying to expand the thinking about what is considered cyber that is more inclusive than just the cybersecurity idea. So that's one of the first decisions. The thing that we're trying to do now, one of the initiatives that we have in the implementation of strategy, it's informally, I call it how to make cyber sexy, right? It's the, we have Top Gun Maverick, right? That's Navy pilot, right? You have a generation of people be like, ooh, now I want to be a pilot. There's a female pilot in the movie. Well, I want to be a pilot, right? But what is the equivalent that we can have, right? Camille and I, when we were working together, we had a writer who wrote a book, ABC for Cybersecurity, right? She wrote ABC for HBCU, and now she wrote, as part of her commitment to help us in this cause, she wrote ABC for cybersecurity, and Camille was mentioned in that book. But I'm just saying, it's like, what are some of these, I brought this up because I feel like you all here are the leaders, right? The panelists and all of you are the leaders. You are closer to the people that we need to reach than the White House ever could, right? What can you do to make sure that, help me make cyber sexy, help me form that narrative, right? And we're always up for good ideas.
Great points. And
I want a cyber sexy T-shirt, by the way.
yeah, agree. Everybody
With the
gets
White House logo?
A little bit of
Wow.
the,
All right, idea number one, I'm gonna bring it back.
Camille and Joel touched on some things, and I think one thing that we need to look at is, and even see, we have that issue of colleges and K through 12 that are like, what gives? They still really don't look at technology the same way they look at other curriculums, other programs. They've only written one War and Peace. Engineering's engineering, human anatomy's human anatomy. So the materials in those courses, they develop over time, and they can adapt over time, but not at the pace that we do. Not at the pace that technology does, not at the pace that cybersecurity does. So, when we start looking at, sending people out, we run them through a program, whether it's a certification program or through a university, a degree program. Even the most current, up-to-date programs are still 3 years out, maybe 4. If you're talking some university programs, you could be 10 years out. And we've got to fix that rapid change, removing that obstacle. And it's an obstacle that we put in place to be able to train people with the skills they need the day they walk in.
So Ron and I have had, I'm sorry, Camille, Ron and I have had this conversation, probably this will be our third version of it, and we don't always agree eye to eye on this one. So a good panel is one that always has some tension, so I'll provide some. There is a difference between education and training. I'll use a very dated example now. Somebody had come to the university and said, why aren't you teaching your students Ruby on Rails? That'll tell you how dated this conversation is. And I'm saying, yeah, but what about the next thing that comes after that? Yes, but this is what we're using. I said, technology evolves. We're not a training program. We're an education program. So if we're going to talk just about computer science or true cybersecurity, we're providing an education that the tools and technology still need to be trained either by additional programs or by their employers. I do agree with Ron that to get a course accredited, it does take some time. Now, most universities, unless we're going off in a complete new area, I know that we have shells that have been approved. Right. And then, when we have a faculty member said, hey, I want to do a reverse engineering course this semester, that fits within this shell, but the teacher can then customize, the instructor professor can customize the content, even give it a different name to reflect what he's going to be taught, but it's within a larger shell. But Ron, we do agree that if somebody said, hey, we don't have a cybersecurity program, or we're not teaching computer security, or wherever the college department it may be in, and you want to start something, you're not teaching classes in the fall.
Right.
Even if you're picking approved curriculum that is being taught at peer institutions, for you to present it to one of the accrediting and have it certified that you can teach it and receive college credit, it takes too long, and that's a problem with U.S. education system, and I don't mean to dump on that, but there is a bottleneck there.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm so glad you made that point, because the dynamics between education and training are real. Mm-hmm. And when we started to develop this strategy, we heard that tension quite a bit. And what we propose is that just as you learn reading, writing, arithmetic, you learn cyber skills. And if you truly have those skills, and if you recall, I said they are not just digital literacy where you can turn it off and on, it's the computational literacy to understand the choices that you are making, and the digital resilience to adapt to changing technology. If we teach that, and we continue to make people curious and ready to learn, the ability to train, to upskill, to right skill, to adapt to new technologies is something that you build on top of that. It opens people up to these careers, but it also is the strong foundation upon which somebody could get the education and then the training. And so that's why I really think that piece is so critical, both in the K through 12 space, but also like as Hampton put it into their foundational curriculum in their higher education curriculum. There is room for those foundational skills, because one thing that they recognize and that we recognize is no matter what industry you work in, you will have to deal with technology, and understanding how you are a part of the secure by design ecosystem. As CU was saying, the reason that we said cyber is because if we are truly moving towards a secure by design environment, that means we all have some responsibility for security and privacy, right? That we still need people who are focused on that, right. But you should be conscious of it as you navigate being a nurse or a doctor or anything else for that matter.
I think the question is then, how do we speed up the adoption? Mm-hmm. So if we have the ideas, we've isolated a few key areas, how can we all help speed this up? Because technology is not slowing down for us.
I think right now, the approach that the administration is taking is pretty ad hoc, I must confess, right? That's also because not a lot of people agree, it just so happened that we agree that cybers and everything on this panel, but but not everyone out there agrees that cyber is in every sector and in everything right now. So in a lot of the work that we do, for example, we work with Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, and they included cyber into the manufacturing course. so that, you know, as President Biden's Investing in America agenda makes its way through the economy, we know that we need to secure the manufacturing, the supply chain, right? So we have a test case running on Pittsburgh right now, putting cyber into the manufacturing courses, the mechatronic courses. And then we also have Augusta University doing cyber in healthcare, medical devices. And Augusta Tech doing cyber in law enforcement. So we have all these different cases here, but there's not a uniform approach yet. We're still looking for ways to kind of get it done. But again, it comes down to whether we even have educators. The original question.
Yes.
Even if we actually, you know, then even if we have the cyber curriculum updated across all these things, the professors or the instructors might not feel comfortable teaching those courses. That we need them to be
That's a good point.
more flexible in allowing different ways for those things to be taught.
And it's done at the state and local level.
Yeah.
So it's not even necessarily your job.
That's right.
It's
And I need to
really
stay
tough.
away from it
Yes,
so
it's
that I don't
actually
get in
really
trouble
tough.
with local politics.
I propose that we, similar to all the other cyber challenges you guys have been discussing in this time frame this week, it has to be multifaceted and multidisciplinary, and we have to attack it from a number of different vantage points. We need to be having community conversations about this. If you are a parent, you should be talking to your schools about how do you get this involved. Maybe you're volunteering to teach some cyber classes to the students around your school. Maybe you are helping with some kind of STEM camp and making sure that cyber is involved. Are you going to the school board meetings and having a conversation about this, in addition to volunteering for a lot of these nonprofit organizations that promulgate cyber skills? CU can do his job from the White House and push and get the Department of Education to push and that kind of thing. But we also have to have community conversations about this, because I think that is where a richer conversation happens and we can promulgate the skills better.
And my
Exactly.
challenge for all of you is if you have good ideas that you're doing, tell us.
Right,
So
right.
that we can tell it to other people so that they can do it, right? We've seen school districts that have done career fairs for parents and guardians.
So
Right,
I'm
exactly.
going to riff on that. So you had mentioned manufacturing. So we're doing at Purdue a large project, Department of Energy funded cybersecurity for energy efficient advanced manufacturing, because as we know, everything is connected now.
Yep.
But this is probably a pretty safe one. I hope this doesn't fail. But in the audience, I'm assuming we all work in cybersecurity, but if you have a degree that is not in computer science or cybersecurity, raise your hand. Yeah. Yet, most of the employers are demanding a computer science degree, a computer engineering degree, a cybersecurity degree, when still 25 plus more years into this industry, not personally, meaning the industry's growth, and it is the majority of did not receive computer science or cybersecurity
And
degrees.
that's a perfect lead-in, Joel, to the next topic of, you know, how industry and workforce can get involved to help this. I mean, I'm a poster child. I've got a high school education, but spent 30 years in this industry. And it's one of these things that there's a lot of people like me that are in this industry that have done their time and want to move out, and they don't care about the salaries and things like that. They want to volunteer. They want to get rid of this information in their head and share it. So that's an issue. But what Joel was bringing up on industry and workforce, what is it that industry leaders can do? Like Joel was mentioning, you know, can they remove those degree requirements? Throw out the standard job rec and ask the people in those departments what it is they actually want and need. You know, what skills? From a policy perspective, we know that there are certain things that can be done. What the federal government's doing now, and we have some states that are starting to pull back those degree requirements. Could it be pushed further? You know, government contractors and subcontractors. This is a mandate. From a academic perspective, how do universities know and colleges and training institutions know what to teach if we as industry don't tell them?
I can jump in a little. Having worked quite a bit in industry, there are some really great creative programs that companies have implemented to develop their workforce. Walmart is training folks in their stores in cyber careers. What a rich population to then train and move into cybersecurity. Microsoft is rewarding some of their practitioners for going out and teaching and being adjuncts. Those things are in their performance reviews. There are a lot of opportunities for companies to incentivize investment in new talent or to encourage their practitioners to get out into the industry and give back. And it is not just the good thing to do, the right thing to do, it's also there's a business case for it. It benefits companies to invest in the next generation of talent, to make sure that they have a rich pipeline. We have over 500,000 cybersecurity jobs open and available in the US alone. And if that is what we are saying, and there's a demand for more people, investing in generating new talent is a worthwhile endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from an employer perspective, so our program, we're very connected to industry because we're reaching out to all of you to hire new entrants coming into the field. And oftentimes it's great to have a degree on the resume, it's a benefit to see certifications, but there's still this 1 to 2 year experience requirement. So we are every day trying to figure out how do we hack that requirement, and whether it's a portfolio that we're building that demonstrates skills that you all would accept. So that's in play, and it will take a little bit more time, but I think what we found works really well is building advocates. So you all work in the space, you all probably manage a team or a department. You could walk home, don't walk home, that would take you too long probably. When you go home, you could have a really positive conversation with the leaders within your organization to talk about entry-level requirements coming into the organization, or even better, what about an upskilling pathway?
Exactly.
So new program and new people sounds a little scary for companies, but if we talk about a new program, an upskilling apprenticeship program per se, with the current employees, it reduces the risk a little bit, and you guys could get started tomorrow.
I'll jump in on that a little bit in terms of like the narrative part, right? So a lot of companies that we talk to mention that they need senior level people, not necessarily new employees, and senior level people, right? And my question for them is usually, if you don't have enough people entering, how do you get the senior people in the future? Right? Which means you have to think about the problem not in a this year time frame, next year time frame. You have to think about it from a 3 to 5 year time frame. Who would fill those positions that you need senior, that you can't hire today, and you've continued to practice, you're not going to be able to get those senior people 3 years, 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
Right?
And there's perfect example is that, and with the upskilling piece, is that if you have a new hire, for them to gain the institutional knowledge needed to function in that job, they may have technical skills, but the institutional knowledge of your organization, of the environment that they're working in, can take 6 months or a year. But you've got somebody sitting in your organization in a service desk, a network admin, a systems admin role, who has that institutional knowledge that you can then incentivize them into the career and then backfill those jobs. It's easier to hire somebody to sit a service desk or a network admin than it is to find a cyber role.
And that's what we're trying now in the administration. We actually have a federal cyber rotational program to let people kind of move from a non-cyber role into a cyber role, to try it out for 6 months, 9 months to 12 months, because someone from Department of Education who has been there for a few years, they have the institutional knowledge. So instead of like hiring someone new, going through this really cumbersome process that we're trying to improve still,
Right.
we can kind of get those talent, right? So even in the federal government, we're trying some of these stuff, right? We're expanding registered apprenticeship, for example, in the federal government. President, go ahead.
I don't need to repeat anything you said because I agree with every bit of it. And all of the corporations that I've talked to that have had these programs, this upskilling that takes somebody who is nowhere near even at any time of a computer job and have put them into a program, the things they cite are the same things that you've mentioned, but also you already know their work ethic. You already know whether they're going to show up or they're going to be late to work. You've already identified those soft skills that are oftentimes lacking and sometimes with employees. Unfortunately, we continue to struggle in just trying to make that first hire. And there's some very, very well-meaning and well-funded programs, and not casting any stones at my peers who are in .gov right now, but have come out. I mean, we were a very large recipient, $11 million from the Department of Labor to start a cyber apprenticeship program. And there are a number of these. Purdue's not the only one. There's a number of universities that have these. And we struggle to get any companies interested in it because the requirements of the program is a company is to hire this person while they start training, getting classes to train them, and they're supposed to be learning on the job. And the almost uniform, the corporations say, to teach them on the job, I've got to assign people to them. It slows my entire security team down. I don't have time to do internal training programs. That's what I'm looking for you to do. So we have a lot of money. We have interested students who are interested in going, and the corporations are like, yeah.
I mean, that problem is not new.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
But on the other side, we also see companies that implement it successfully.
Yeah.
Because they see workforce as a strategic initiative. They are not looking at it as a short-term gain
Right.
to put butts to seats, so to speak, right? They see this as like, cybersecurity is important for us. We need this in the long term. We just have to make the investments because all these other ways that we have done it have not worked, right? During our White House convening last week, we highlighted the very first cyber apprentice graduate from Pittsburgh in a small company because they couldn't hire traditionally. And this is a way for them to get a talent. It is more cost up front, it is more resources, but now they have a loyal employee after the apprenticeship thing is over. So I hear it from both sides. I think we can both fix some of the requirements to make sure that it's less cumbersome, but we also need companies to really step up and step in and lean in this process to get the people that they want.
That kind of leads to the next topics, and you guys have touched on this kind of across the board with the OT, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, energy sector, transportation, all of the communications. All of these sectors have talent, field engineers, technicians that work in their space, but everything's enabled now, and they have to understand the technical piece, just the computing piece of it, but then the security piece on top of that. So, today we say there's 500,000 open cyber jobs. Imagine when we classify all of those people as tech workers, because they're not classified as tech workers right now. But they are. So when that happens, that number jumps even higher. So we've got to figure out how to, break these barriers down, get these organizations and institutions and sectors that are used to apprenticeship programs, manufacturing and things, take some of their experience, start looking at expanding. Maybe we tweak the apprenticeship program at the Department of Labor, whatever it may be. We need more people getting trained. And, the other thing in the future, which I'm sure is new to everybody here, is this thing called AI. Skynet, it is coming, it is real. But that's something that adds an additional layer, but it's also a benefit. How can we make use of this technology out there? It's valuable. I've never seen anyone who knows everything, even in their specialty. They all learn how to do research. They all learn how to go find the answer. And correct AI platforms, the generative AI platforms, give you the ability to query that answer really, really quick. I know that universities some are embracing it, and others are like, oh my gosh, everybody's going to cheat. Well, they said that about calculators, At some point, we have to realize that these things are tools. So what do you guys think?
I want to give you an example that you opened up there. I do research with Boeing Corporation, and one of my primary contacts there reached out and said, Joel, we're going to hire as many of your aero engineers as we possibly can. We have need, and we're going to hire as many of your cybersecurity and computer science students as we can because we have that need. He says, but none of your aero engineers know anything about cyber, and none of your cyber students know anything about aero. And I pushed back, said, oh, we're doing blah, 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 this research and that research. He's like, no, I'm not talking about research. I'm talking about providing a workforce that is ready to work for us. And I was like, you're right. So we put out a press release. We announced a new program that we put together called the Cyber Aviation Program. And it was taking cybersecurity students and aero engineering students. Boeing gave them problems, and they worked as an interdisciplinary team, which we all have to do in our jobs. So it was teaching them to work with something. It was not to turn the aero engineers into cybersecurity experts, but it was to teach the aero engineers that here's where I've got a connection. I better make sure the security team knows about this so that we design it well. Yeah. Then Sandia National Labs reached out and said, can't we do this with nuclear? And I'm like, well, yeah. Well, we ought to do a nuclear cyber. And then I'm like, no, cyber plus X. So Purdue is offering a cyber plus X that is industry domain specific, but brings in this. I've started working with University of Colorado Springs, which is a very national defense oriented, same thing. So we are trying to share this model with other universities so that your John Deere's, your Boeing's, your Rolls Royces, whoever they may be, your Duke Energy, that we are teaching people in disciplines, in an engineering discipline, to understand the cyber. Because we're not going to be able to hire just enough cybersecurity experts to help the engineers. We need to broaden the amount of people playing in our space. Thanks for letting me grandstand.
I'd like to piggyback off of that, and then I'll address your question about AI. One of the cores of the strategy is this recognition that we need to build ecosystems that bring together academia, companies, state and local government, federal government, training programs, and the communities to figure out the best way to develop cyber education and learning to support an agile workforce that can respond to the technological dynamics. This is a great manifestation of that, right? To recognize that there is a need for both the cybersecurity skill set and the domain-specific expertise. You are being directly responsive to the employers. That's what we want, employers to talk to academia, tell them what they need, to talk to training providers, tell them what they need, so that folks actually land jobs. Right? That cohort of students is going to land a job because they are directly responsive to an employer. And so I encourage more of those conversations. I just wanted to kudos to that. And then in terms of AI, I mean, there's so much promise in AI. I know a lot of people are afraid that it's going to get rid of their jobs, but if we're doing this right, which I think we're on the track to do because we're having so many conversations about how AI might impact the workforce, how we should create boundaries and barriers, people recognize that we must have a person still doing the job, still managing the work. So even if we streamline how many people are touching a given task, what we really are doing is kind of removing the rote tasks, removing the boring tasks, and creating a lot more job satisfaction, a lot more opportunity for growth and development in the areas that people are excited about and interested in. And so there's a lot of opportunity in incorporating AI into work because it can remove some of the more mundane things. And if folks lean into that while recognizing the importance of having a human watching the work and working alongside of that, it can increase productivity while still maintaining a cadre of workers who are invested in and knowledgeable about the content.
I think another angle with AI, so on the job for sure, but we're actually using it in the training experience. So we have an AI mentor for our learners, and we feed it our content, and so it's learning what our instructors are teaching. So it becomes a sit along beside our instructor to help the student understand or help answer anything specific need that they might have that doesn't pause the entire class or take the conversation a different way. So the AI mentor has really created a cool personalized learning experience for many different students. And
That's great.
That's awesome.
yeah, I think that's going to continue to grow.
I've seen use cases in which generative AI is helping like analysts do a better job asking different questions. From the federal government standpoint, from the administration, the president signed off on the executive order for AI, right, which is to mitigate harm, but also meet the promise and make sure that the promise of AI is delivered. So one of the things that we did there is that we are hiring a lot of AI talent in the federal government. We just ran and here's an interesting thing for folks, right, how to think about AI and cyber, is that in the federal government, we are doing that together because there are enough overlap in the skills that we need. So that's so that we're doing all this hiring together. We just ran a Tech to Gov hiring event. 2 weeks ago, there was like 1,200 people who showed up, right? We have 1,200 resumes. We're gonna try to kind of hire a lot of these people in the federal government. This is to say is that we're taking a skills-based approach. We're trying to look at the skills that we need, and we saw overlap between AI and cyber, and that's why we are doing them together now, right? As a federal policy, and that, as it turns out, what we believe in is that if we take this approach, it will also future-proof our workforce from the potential disruptions of the future. If you make sure that folks have the skills to do the work and then have the skills to learn new skills, then whatever changes that AI will bring to the workforce in the future, the workforce is dynamic enough to meet that new challenge, to meet that new demand, right? So that's sort of like, it all kind of comes back to like, what do we really want to do, right? Back to your original question about like, oh, the disruption, I think I would encourage people to think about what do we want the human workers to do, which is critical thinking, decision making, right? Focus on getting them those tools to do those work, and then have AI and automation take care of the rest.
Fantastic. I want to kind of wrap up, and we want to get some audience interaction. We want to know from you. And when you do have questions, please come up to the microphones. It makes life a lot easier for us as well as those watching online. And I've got to put this slide up because RSA said I had to have an apply slide. So just for your information, like everybody has said, go talk to your organizations, go talk to your colleges, go talk to your industry, reach out to state, local, national apprenticeship programs, internship programs. Look for creative ways to do this because we have a huge task ahead of us. Cybersecurity is not going away. Technology is not going away. And we have to figure out a way to help people. So quickly, if you guys can kind of, what's your key takeaway for everybody here, and then we can grab some questions.
There's a lot of opportunity to get involved. I mean, you see some examples, you've heard us talk about it. I would love to see all of you either volunteering or dedicating some of your time, you can get paid to teach, to train, to have a conversation with your local school district and try to advance these skills. If you or your organization have a really cool program, you mentioned earlier that you could reach out to the White House, they want to know because they'd love to help promulgate that information so people can scale it. And so I'm volunteering C's email. You just go harass him and tell him about your
Come
good
talk to
program. Get him after this. But he's serious. When I was there, and I know he still is, we were very open to having conversations about that. And then there are a number of other organizations that are also doing this work. And so there are a number of opportunities to plug in and be a part of the ecosystem that is being built around promulgating cyber skills and changing the education landscape and all of the good things that will get us all the people we need.
And for me is that we can't do this work unless you are involved. And then what we're bringing to the table is President Biden, Investing in America agenda, is sending $1.8 trillion to the economy, right? Not all of it can be used for cyber, but the last I checked, a little bit out of $1.8 trillion is still a lot of money. So when we are using that money to rebuild the metro station, for example, there are digital elements in there. I would love for people to actually think about how you can be part of those projects to bring the concept of cyber to those projects, to bring the concept of cyber education and training into those projects so that we get the workforce that we need and built in those cybersecurity upfront instead of like tagging it on later, right? And that would be too late.
I would say leave the room as an advocate for the next generation of our workforce. You guys are, you have so much talent and access, and it's really just your voice driving awareness and educating others around you that together, I mean, this could, you know, turn over pretty quickly if you guys are willing to put a little work in and use the resources here and around you to ask questions or help, you know, guide the conversation. I am more than happy if there is anyone in the room that thinks upskilling might be something your organization, would be open to. My time is yours, so I'd be happy to chat.
Similar. Get involved at the high school and college level. Our own local high school, right next door to a major R1 university that's exceptional in cybersecurity, had no courses. So I found one of our faculty that said they would be happy to start the cybersecurity club. And then the school came back and said, well, it's $1,500. We don't have that in our budget to provide the coach for the team. We found that out. Reach out to your local schools, high school level. At the college level, that's all, junior colleges, community colleges, all. Reach out and volunteer to come give a talk, host a hands-on workshop. Students beg for those things. It's so great. And you'll identify young talent. Semi-related to that, and I suspect there are very few HR recruiters in the room, but we hear all the time, oh, well, we came to your job fair and we couldn't hire any cybersecurity students. Well, they're all getting multiple offers. I mean, we know the need is out there, but they come to the job fair because the top students are identifying where they want to go work for far before that senior year when they go to the job fair. So if you're investing to hire out of college cybersecurity experts and just showing up at the career fairs, you're probably hiring our least qualified students because they're the ones not getting. So get involved in these programs early to do internships, to build connections, get them in, job shadows, those type of things.
Fantastic tips. These guys are the experts in this sector, and now we want to hear from you. There's got to be a question.
So while they come up, I'm going to do a quick call here. So you guys can find our things there, Sirius, okay, but Sirius at purdue.edu. We have a weekly cybersecurity seminar that started in 1999.
Oh, wow.
All of the sessions from the year 2000 forward have been recorded. They're available on our website. Right next to that is the continuing education. So those of you with letters after your names who need to get continuing education, you can tune in virtually, watch our conversation, ask questions of the professionals from all over the world who give their talks. Same for your staff. Adjacent to that is I'm always looking for great speakers to give a talk. So you can find me down. I'd love to slate many of you in this room to give a talk. At the core, it is an educational program. It's a graduate level 591 class at Purdue. Yeah. So it's got to be educational, but I want our students to hear from industry to help shape their education and their research.
All right, we've got a lot of people standing here. I'll start over here, and we'll just back and forth. Go ahead.
And maybe just one of us can answer each question.
So
Yeah.
I have a question and a comment and observation. I usually mentor folks who are in some way through their cyber career, but over the last year I've had a chance to work with someone who changed degree, went and finished their degree due to a pandemic, finishing their degree with cybersecurity online, helping them look for entry-level positions. Almost all of them, there may be 500,000 positions open, but almost all of the positions say 1 to 2 years experience. So
Right.
I think as employers, we need to look at that as an action that we can all take away to say, is that really true that we need, and how on earth do these graduates get 1 to 2 years
Right.
experience? Many of the job roles do say entry level or even graduate, and when you dig down, it's in there. So it seems that we are increasing the number of candidates, but we're not giving them easy entry into industry after that. So have you observed any particularly great pathways that new graduates can go into without experience?
So here's the recommendation and what we offer every single day. Just because the job description says 1 to 2 years experience doesn't mean that's required. And we're going to tell the students to apply anyway. Apply and then be the best networkers that you can be. Connect, join, the clubs, the groups. Oftentimes the job offer isn't going to come from a resume, going through the ATS system and then landing somewhere. It's going to come from the network that you're building. So that's a key skill, fundamental skill to meaningful employment.
Fantastic tip.
Great, thank you very much.
I love your question, by the way. So you said you wouldn't get a recruiter in here, but you've got one. So I have a cybersecurity staffing company. I also lead the board for the National Cybersecurity, lead the industry advisory board, I should say, for the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Centre. So I'm involved in a lot of the stuff you talk about, which is amazing. I love to be part of it. It's been 10 years. I think actually a lot of the struggles that the graduates are finding is, especially coming out of community colleges, they're not getting these like multiple job offers, right? They're not having that. So what are the things we can do to actually get companies to create more of these internships, more of the entry-level roles? How can we, you talked about Microsoft and Walmart and their amazing stories. How do we get those stories into the companies so they can see the benefits? What can we do, and what are you guys doing?
Have you ever considered training other recruiters? Because I feel like
I've done a few of that. Yeah,
oh,
a little
good.
bit.
I think a lot of companies would benefit from that. I think that's actually one step. That's one of the things CU is doing in his role, is sharing all of these stories so that more of the industry recognizes the value, and then sharing the blueprints for how they are building out these programs. But I think companies need to share one-to-one as well.
We are already connected, so.
Yeah, we can be talking more.
So
Yeah.
I think that's it. Like, I think that the power of the White House is we can bring attention to an issue. So when we get the Merck, the Union Pacific, the non-technical companies to do these programs, it sends a signal to the industry that we want to see more. But there's only so many events I can do,
So
So.
try to get
Unfortunately, I've seen the stop sign, but these guys are going to be available. We're available. I have to run to do another session. I've got a couple of guys from our organization that are willing to ask questions or answer questions. I'm not sure if we're going to get run out of this room or not, but feel free to stick around and if you've got questions for us, get our contact information. Reach out afterwards. There's a lot of stuff going on, so we all want to follow up with you. And give everyone a round of applause. These are the guys that are leading the cause.